Good evening. My name is Florette Epo. My group mates Sarah, Jubin, Lauren, Erica, and Tanisha will be talking about social psychology. But first, I will start about the general information. Social psychology is the studying of the way people relate to others, attitude, attraction, aggression, group behavior. The key definition is a branch of psychology concerned with the study of individual and groups and the interpersonal interactions within the groups itself. Degrees, licensing, and certification that are required for this practice consists of the LBSW, the Licensed Baccalaureate Social Worker. The education requirements for this consist of a bachelor's degree, which takes about 4 years. Another degree or license would be the LMSW, the Licensed Master's Social Worker. This, of course, has an education requirement of your master's degree. This takes about 6 years. And last is the LCSW. This is the Licensed Clinical Social Worker. The education requirements for this is a master's degree plus 3,000 clinical hours. This takes about 7 to 8 years to obtain. All of these available programs are online or on campus. Students in Texas could be trained at Texas A&M or Texas Tech, but the top 5 schools for social psychology include of Ohio State University, University of Michigan, Harvard University, Princeton University, and Stanford University. The typical settings for social workers are schools, universities, and the government. The typical annual earnings is $74,960 per year. This is $36.04. Now, Jubin will be talking about the history of social psychology.
Everyone, my name is Jubin Jacob, and I'll talk to you about the history of social psychology. Some of the early influences of social psychology dates back in the Aristotle era. Aristotle believes that humans were naturally sociable and it was necessary for all of us to live together. The first text to emerge was in the start of the 20th century. It was published by McDougall in 1908. The book was called Introduction to Social Psychology. The chapter mainly focused on emotion, sentiment, moralities, and religion. The first experiment was done by Norman Triplett. There was some disagreement about the first true experiment because it wasn't actually well documented. But in this experiment, he investigated the performance of cyclists and school children on how they present of others' influence overall performance. Many people got interested in social psychology following World War II. More studies have been conducted, and the most famous work was developed by Milgram in the electric shock study. These are the key important figures. And the one we're going to talk about is Bandura in the social learning theory. In this, Bandura puts 3 children in a room and they watched a video of adults beating up a bubble clown. And in the end, the children saw a bubble clown and they beat the bubble clown. And now Tanisha is going to talk to you guys about social psychologies of the social media.
My name is Tanisha Graham. I'm going to be talking to you guys today about social media and social psychology. In psychology, social psychology is a scientific study of how people's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are influenced by the actual imagined or implied presence of others. With social media websites like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter being so easily accessible, we can see firsthand how a person presents themselves in an online setting. With social media websites being used as a main form of communication with others, face-to-face communication is being affected. It's becoming easier to talk to someone on Facebook than it is in person. When you're online, it's easier to voice your thoughts and feelings. Kids are becoming dependent on Facebook and Twitter to talk to one another. You can walk through the hallways of a school or college campus and find that people are on their phones instead of chatting with one another. Some believe that these interactions are causing our generation to lose valuable social skills that help us communicate with one another. Cyberbullying through various social media websites is on the rise because we are a generation dependent on the ease of this form of communication. It's easier to hide behind a laptop and post hurtful comments. Now I'm going to show you guys a clip of a video that helps you better understand social psychology and cyberbullying.
Our world has entered into a new era, connected and brought together by social media. As human beings, it is our nature to crave social interaction. The rise of social networking sites such as Facebook and Twitter has provided the perfect opportunity to satisfy our social appetites. But with this rise of online interaction, there is a force that is constantly affecting not only those around us, but millions across the world: cyberbullying. According to the basic dictionary definition, cyberbullying is the use of online communications to harass, threaten, or embarrass another. The action of cyberbullying can vary from forwarding cruel private messages, pictures, or videos to assuming false identities on social networking sites. Unlike traditional face-to-face bullies, cyberbullies have the advantage of anonymity. Masked behind the computer screen and online accounts, many are given a false sense of authority and security, believing that their actions will have no consequences. And because cyberbullying takes place on the internet, these embarrassing messages and private images or videos can spread like wildfire just by clicking send. Simply turning off the computer is not a one-time solution, as those around you are still part of the online community, and the harassment can continue into your offline environment. When the bullying continues, most victims experience symptoms such as withdrawal from family and friends, depression, and even thoughts of suicide. The internet, what could be a fun and safe community for the world, is now contaminated with hatred. Cyberbullying is a monster we've created ourselves, and it has to be us who will put an end to this epidemic.
Hi, I'm Erica Holt, and I'm going to be talking about an issue in social psychology known as the bystander effect. The bystander effect, by definition, occurs when the presence of other people hinders an individual from intervening in an emergency situation. One of the more well-known cases of this is the Holocaust. It was really hard for people to believe that such a horrendous and atrocious crime could happen outside large German cities without any public outcry at all. When interviewers asked Germans and Nazi officers why they didn't report these things, the German citizens reported that, well, if such horrendous things were happening, and if things were as bad as the newspapers were reporting, then I'm sure that somebody else would have tried to stop it, or that somebody else would have tried to report this. The same thing went with the Nazi officers. When asked about their lack of action, they would respond with, "I was just following orders," diffusing their responsibility from them. This is a huge thing with the bystander effect. When there are so many people, it's really easy for us as individuals to not take responsibility or take blame when things are happening. Another really well-known case is one that happened 2 years ago. It was one that happened in New York by Mr. Kisa Khan and another individual. He got in a fight in a subway with a man, which led to an altercation. The other man pushed Mr. Han into the railroad tracks, and he was inevitably hit by a train. A lot of the outcry was that he was yelling there for minutes, asking for help, and nobody stepped in, nobody wanted to help. And another issue with that case was that one newspaper even published a picture of him moments before he died, because there were tons of people there taking pictures, but nobody stepped in to help and nobody called for help. And this was a very heartless thing to do and concern with his family. One that really popularized this case, though, was the one of Kitty Genovese. John Darley, and Bibb Latany, they are social psychologists who made the bystander effect popular based on this case. Kitty was a young girl in New York, and she was on her way home. She was stabbed to death 3 times with tons of people around who observed and did not step in or assist or call for help. When asked again, why didn't you guys help? Everybody there said that there are so many other people that I'm sure that somebody else was going to call. I'm sure that somebody else already did call, and I'm sure that somebody else was going to help. And this is what raised such a fear and realization about a default in our society. Biblet Haney and John Darley thought that this was a huge issue and that somehow we could probably prevent such things happening. Some things that you can do is speak up, ask for help, or tell a specific person what to do. Us as humans work better under direction. So if we specifically point someone out and say, hey, you call 911 in emergency situations, that makes one person responsible instead of assuming that everybody there is going to do the right thing. The most important thing is to do not assume that anyone is going to do anything. Take it upon yourself if you see an emergency situation to call and help. I know this is a hard thing to do because just in our society, it's odd for anybody to want to step out of the norm to stand out, especially in public situations. This YouTube clip is going to demonstrate that perfectly.
Plays like this street in New York City. If you were unfortunate enough to be the victim of a crime or taken ill unexpectedly, you might think that surrounded by all these people, someone would intervene. After all, isn't there safety in numbers? Psychologists say no. Research suggests that often a victim is less likely to receive assistance when surrounded by a group rather than a single bystander. When people are in a crowd, it's easier to pass the buck. It's what psychologists call the diffusion of responsibility.
My name is Lauren Fenmore, and I will be talking about how emotions can spread, which is just another subject area that a lot of people look into who are social psychologists. Now, I think one of the first questions to ask is it possible? Can emotions really spread from person to person? And my answer to that is yes, it can. Now, there are two different steps into these emotions spreading. The first one is mimicry. And mimicry is when someone imitates another person's actions or behaviors, their facial expressions or vocal inflections. And this generally then can lead to emotional contagion. Emotional contagion is when one mimics another's behaviors, and that then eventually leads to them feeling the same emotions. So, for example, if someone is smiling in response to someone else, generally activating and stimulating those muscles will make them feel happier. Also, this is something that can happen both consciously and subconsciously. So that just means whether they're aware of it or they don't realize that it's happening to them or that they're having this occur to someone else. And this can also be both positive and negative emotions. So it can be happy, just different positivity, or just if they're upbeat or they have a positive outlook on things. But it can also be negative emotions. So if they're upset or angry or they're just being very negative about life. And there have been many studies done over this. So for example, it's been found that people naturally mimic other people. And that can be their behaviors, just their emotions, just anything. But they found that it's natural for us to mimic others. Also, it's been found that laughter is the most contagious behavior. So generally when you're with someone, if they start laughing, it's been found that other people around them are more likely to start laughing as well. And this can then lead to a more positive attitude because they are activating those smiling muscles. In addition, it's been found that experiences are generally intensified when they're shared with another person. So in a study, it was found that when one ate bitter chocolate by themselves, they rated it lower than if they rated the bitter chocolate and ate it while with someone else, whether they were just in the room or they were eating it with them. And this was also done and found the same results when eating sweet chocolate, that they scored it higher and more sweet and more satisfying if they were with someone else. Lastly, it was found that emotions spread while working in group settings. So if you have someone in your group who has a very high work ethic, that they're very positive and encouraging to other people, generally that is spread throughout the group. So the other people in the group then adopt that same work ethic. And this can happen both in that positive way, that they do have a good work ethic, or in a negative way, where they don't work as well, and they're not as positive on things, they don't get things done. So they're productivity is definitely decreased. So emotional contagion is something that does exist. You do spread your emotions from person to person, and this can happen whether you're aware of it or not. But it is good to know, in a way, so that you're not spreading negative emotions to other people all the time, that you're spreading a positive message. Next, Sarah will be talking about Ebola and its panic expressions with other people.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Harris, and for this presentation I would like to talk to you about the recent social panic surrounding the threat of Ebola in the United States. First, let's start by taking a look at a news segment illustrating the effects of mass hysteria and social panic.
A new study shows that nearly half of Americans are so concerned about catching the Ebola virus that they are unwilling to travel abroad at all. And a school in Cleveland cancelled classes after learning that one staff member might have flown on the same airline, not even the same route, as one of the infected nurses. RT's Gayane Chichkan now assessing the hype.
Ebola is out of control, but so are some of the stories that people make up about Ebola. There are reports about magical cures, to the point that the World Health Organization has issued several warnings over bogus cures and precautionary measures. In Nigeria, for example, at least 2 people have died after drinking salt water, rumored to be protective. Some media spread a theory that ISIS fighters could infect themselves with the deadly virus to use it as a biological weapon against the West. Homeland Security Secretary came out and dismissed it, saying there's no evidence of ISIS Ebola threat.
As you can see, fear spreads fast. The question remains, however, how much of our fear is based on fact and how much is based on speculation? In the words of Jeffrey Kluger, panic shows itself in a lot of ways, none of them terribly pretty. It's when reason gets shouted down and shown from the room, when we quit being governed by what we know and instead by what we fear. Now let's focus on an important aspect of how social panic spreads, the media. Now the media is a huge source of our day-to-day information on things such as sports, the weather, social trends, wars, you name it. It's important to remember with this constant stream of information that the media often emphasizes small portions of a situation in order to bring more attention to a particular situation, meaning that sometimes they will exaggerate the details in order to hold your attention. In a study conducted by Gibbons, Lukowski, and Walker in 2005, they concluded that based on the finding that 4 minutes of exposure enhanced the believability of unbelievable headlines, prolonged exposure could lead to deep processing, increased belief, and even speculation on the part of the newscaster as well as viewers. Now, I don't know about you, but that's some pretty scary information. They're basically saying that the more we're exposed to a particular piece of information, the more likely we are to believe it, regardless of whether it's true or not. Now, some strategies in order to become a positive and stable force in a society where, speculation is just as frequent as truth. First, we have to rationalize our fears. Understand what it is that you're afraid of. Like with the Ebola panic. If you're afraid of Ebola, make sure that you're taking all the precautions that you can to keep yourself, safe and keep the people around you safe. Keep calm. Remember that your fear is only going to compromise your logic. Know the facts. Research several sources. Know everything that you can about your anxiety and about your fear. And most importantly, remember that your potential to change the world is limitless. Thank you so much.